If you just go for blind faith, for positive thinking, law of attraction, this kind of stuff, which is to a certain extent is magical or supernatural, you're bound to be disappointed because they are not based on reality. They are based on subjective thoughts, subjective feelings. And you might feel that you are going in the right direction, but if it's not based on facts, eventually you will make mistakes. Hi, this is John Vespasian. I'm delighted to be in the I Share Hope podcast, and I hope you can use some of my ideas to find your way in life.
Welcome to I Share Hope, the podcast where world leaders share their real stories of hope and how you can use actionable hope to start changing your life today. And now, here's your host, Chris Williams.
Hi, Chris.
Hey, John. How are you?
Very well. I thought we were going to do only audio.
I'm good with either way. I'd prefer video because we put a lot of these things on YouTube as well.
Well, right. It's 11 a.m., 11 p.m. here because I'm in Europe now.
Yeah.
So I'm in my pajamas right now.
then you can stay in your pajamas and not do video. That's totally fine. I'll just let them look at my face, and I'm wearing real clothes, so it's all good now. So, are you sitting in bed on this call, or are you like at the table?
No, I'm at the table. At the table, I'm wearing my headphones. So I hope the sound is good. I'm coming through all right.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Sounds
perfect.
Sounds
very well, yeah.
And it sounds great. Okay, that's great. You know, I interviewed somebody else last week, and the guy was sitting in his bed, and it was super cool. Like, he was totally sitting in his bed, like, for the whole interview. It was video. I thought it was just fun. It was really he was a really cool guy. Really cool guy.
Well, I wouldn't find that suitable for YouTube.
All right, so I'm hoping the PJs are either like classic pinstripes or they have like cows jumping over the moon or sheep on them, right?
Okay.
All right, man. So can I call you a realist? A rationalist? Can I call you a rationalist?
Well, I'm an author and I write about rational living. So, I write about personal development. Mm-hmm. And the branch of personal development I promote is rational living, which is basically about thinking things through and trying to avoid emotional mistakes.
Sure. That's great. That's great. So when you introduce yourself and somebody says, well, hey, John, what do you do for a living? Do you say, well, I'm an author and I write about rational living? Or do you say, well, I'm a rationalist who happens to also write and teach and speak? How do you present that?
Well, I present myself as an author. It's difficult to stay rational all the time, and this is one of the points I make in my books. It's not the point of rational living. Rational living is to try to make good decisions most of the time, to know that emotions play a very important role in human life, that you should take into account, you should enjoy them, they enrich your life. But when you're making important decisions, it's really very important that you try to think things through. You have to look at the facts. You have to use logic. And the main point of my books, which are basically a compilation of real stories about history and people who have been very successful and very unsuccessful, is to draw lessons from actually real cases and to try to learn from them and to try to become a bit more rational. So if the readers of my books become 1% more rational or 2% more rational, I think it can make a great difference in their lives in the long term. Mm-hmm. I think the whole point of rational living is to become a bit more rational every day, being conscious that we are going to make mistakes, all of us, all the time. It was very difficult to... Sometimes you don't have the information, so you have to make decisions with incomplete information. Mm-hmm. But if you just try to be rational and to apply the principles of rational living, most of the time, I think in the long term, you will get very good results. So that's the whole point of my books. Huh?
I love it. That makes a lot of sense. It's very rational. It really is. So, John, say your last name so I can get it right.
Vespasian.
Vespasian.
Yeah. The natural pronunciation for Americans is Vespasian. So feel free to mispronounce it as much as you want, because I've given up a long time ago, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, John Vespasian or Vespasian is perfectly fine.
I'll do Vespasian. I'll do my best to get the way you want to say it, okay? All right, John Vespasian. So you are an author of 7 books, am I right?
Yes, the book number 8 is coming out in August. Sorry, nice. In August or September, but it's coming out very soon.
and all about rationality, and you've made the very rational choice to not do a video chat today since you're in your PJs. I think that makes a lot of sense. It's a great example.
Well, I think most people would make that decision.
Yeah. All right, so let me do this then, John. You know how this works. We are interviewing 1,000 people who are leading the world in hope. Their own community. Sometimes it's a small little tribe in the middle of nowhere. Sometimes it's a head of state. It just depends on the person we're interviewing. So we ask each person in our 1,000 participants the same 5 questions about hope. And honestly, this one's really intriguing to me because as someone who is an author and speaker on rational living and thinking, some people equate hope to a more ethereal, pie in the sky, something you can't feel, see, or touch, things like that. So I have no idea where you're going with this, but I'm really curious to hear the answers to your questions. So can I dive in and hear what you have to say?
Go ahead. I think you will like it.
Okay. Well, it doesn't matter about me. This is all about you, really. I just get to ask the questions. You have to do all the hard work.
Okay. Go ahead.
All right. Question 1. What is your favorite quote about hope or your belief about hope?
Well, my belief about hope is that it has to be built on facts. It has to be built on logic. If you just go for blind faith, for positive thinking, law of attraction, this kind of stuff, which is to a certain extent is magical or supernatural, you are bound to be disappointed because they are not based on reality. They are based on subjective thoughts, subjective feelings, and you might feel that you are going in the right direction, but if it's not based on facts, eventually you will make mistakes. So the whole idea of my books and the whole idea of rational living is to use your mind, to use logic, to stay optimistic, to stay positive, to stay motivated, but to base your motivation on real facts. And I want to expand on this because when people read the newspapers every day, most people get depressed and say, oh my God, what a terrible world. There are so many problems and what are we going to do? And sometimes they only have like 2 options. And then option 1, they become completely cynical and I would say bitter and say, okay, it's really horrible and there is no solution, so why bother? And they just forget about philosophy and forget about ideas and they become only short-term oriented. And this is I think, wrong because it deprives you of your ability of human being to think long-term. And the second option, many people take this option, is to become completely unrealistic. And they start to go into really fantasy thinking and they are cheerful all the time and they become like completely out of touch with reality. Very enthusiastic and everything's going to be fine, everything's going to be fine. So they go one way or the other. And both are equally irrational and both are, I would say, defensive approaches to try to avoid dealing with reality. And what I propose in my books is that you can stay optimistic and you can stay motivated if you really look at the big picture. And in our world today, when there are so many problems and you see all this negative news in the newspapers, there are 3 trends that really go beyond that, and they're very, very positive, very, very optimistic. And it's very easy to forget them when you look at the problems of the day. But you have to keep these 3 trends in your mind because they are going to shape a great future for society and for humanity. And the first trend, which many people forget, but is technology. And technology is moving at a high speed. And since we are in the middle of, I would say, history, we don't see it because we feel like natural that every day you get new apps, every day you get new services, every day you get new stuff. But this is unique in history. The acceleration of technology that you see nowadays, the new products, the new components, they make everything faster, everything cheaper, everything. Even the headphones I'm wearing right now. A few years ago they cost hundreds of dollars, and now they are very cheap. Sure. And you see this every time. And this is going to improve human lives for the next decades, for the next centuries. And this is much more important than the little problem that you see in the newspaper or the big problem you see in the newspaper today. This trend is going to stay for the future, and it's going to improve human life a lot. The second trend, which is very well established, and I don't think is going to change for the next generations, is that many more people, I mean thousands, probably millions of people, have an entrepreneurial mentality. They have the idea to become financially independent, to start their own business, to think for themselves, to have initiative, to develop new ideas or new products. Even if you work at a company, in a company, you can still be entrepreneurial. You can develop new trends, new lines of products. And this is unique in history. You have to realize that it started a bit on the 19th century. In the 20th century, it was well established in some countries, but now it's all over the place. You will find many entrepreneurial people in China. You will find in South America. You will find in Asia. You will find in Africa. And this is amazing because this is going to establish a trend for economic growth, for creation of jobs, for creation of opportunities, for new services. And this is going to improve human life generation after generation in the future. And it's doing already in the present. And you see some countries in Africa growing at 6% per year, every year.
Yeah.
Even with a lot of problems, they still grow because people are entrepreneurial. And the third tendency I want to mention is that for the first time in history, it's very easy to move between countries and to establish yourself in a new country.
Yeah.
And this is also new because, you've seen this also at the beginning of the 20th century. End of the 20th century was still possible, but now you see millions of people starting businesses in other countries, creating companies in other countries, establishing social networks in other countries, moving easily from one country to the other because the taxes are lower, because there are better opportunities, because there are better employment possibilities, or because the living costs are cheaper. And this is amazing because this is going to create opportunities for millions of people to improve their lives. And this is also unique in history. So I think there are very, very good objective reasons to be optimistic. And it is much better to be optimistic based on objective reasons than to try to just cheer yourself up with some phony positive thinking stuff, which is not really based on facts. And it's better to spend your energies, to devote your energies to building something real than to try to keep yourself optimistic artificially.
Well, I wish they'd let you talk on the evening news more because they present so many little facts and issues and sound bites on the news every night, and it's all so pessimistic, but you actually present some great points that there's really a lot to be optimistic about and have hope about that's not just pie in the sky or a dream. It's actually reality, what's going on. So, nice. All right, with that hope, with that definition of really putting a calculation and a real brain to hope. Not that other people haven't, but you know what I'm saying, a real check on reality to hope. Who has shared that kind of hope with you in your past? Who's been the biggest giver of hope to you?
Well, I have to say I have many dozens of shares of hope because I've been a voracious reader for decades. I have many favorite authors and many books I have read a dozen times. And I have to say, there are many people in history who have been extraordinary examples to follow in some specific area of life. And I want to give you just one example. For instance, one of my favorite authors for years, because of the richness of language and the absolute mastery of the English language, was Henry Miller. And Miller is an example in some areas of life because he was a guy who was extremely persistent. I mean, he wrote books, for decades. Nobody wanted to publish them. They were forbidden in the United States. In the end, he made money when he was very old. He was already in his 90s when he actually started to get some royalties from the U.S. But Miller just kept going because he developed his talent through the decades. And you see his early works he wrote before he went to France. He wrote when he was in the States still. They're really very bad. The language was poor. The constructions were really artificial. He was not really a good writer, but he persisted for decades. And when you see his mature work when he was in his 40s or 50s, it's really amazing. You see the mastery of English language, the richness, the construction of the whole stories is really amazing. And you can learn a lot from people like Henry Miller, how to really live the life of your dreams with really a very small budget, because he was always scratching for money all the time because he didn't get enough money from his writing. But the guy lived a very simple life. He didn't spend a lot of money. He He lived for decades in modest conditions, but still he was an extremely happy person. And I have learned a lot from many examples. I mean, this is just one of them. From many examples in history, and each of them, I mean, I really expand on them in my book, because you can learn a lot how to stay rational, how to stay, I see, optimistic based on facts and based on your capacities, based on your assessment of the future, how to stay optimistic even when you're dealing with adversity. And the people like Henry Miller, they teach us, I mean, not only his books are really interesting to read, but also his life I find fascinating. And the whole purpose of my work, my books, is just to analyze the life of people like Henry Miller and many other people, to learn from them, not only from what they say, but also from what they do, and to try to develop strategies that readers can apply in their own lives to improve their lives right now.
Excellent. Great example. Great example. So question 3 is, when is a time in your life when you've actually had to use the kind of hope you're talking about to get you through something hard? Kind of take us back to that place, paint a picture. What was it like?
Well, you have to realize that I started to write in 2008 when I started to write books basically out of frustration. I have to explain this clearly, because most people that write the books, they put it in a very rosy picture. But in my case, I have to tell you straight away, I started to write books out of frustration because I've been reading books about psychology and philosophy and personal development for decades. And at a certain point, I was really very dissatisfied with the books I was reading, because I found them superficial, I found them unrealistic. I found them most of them copy-paste or sort of quoting each other without really saying anything or proving anything. And at a certain point, I was very fed up. I said, come on, it's all the same. It doesn't really mean anything. I decided to start writing books myself. And it's now, since 2008, now it's a lot of years of writing book after book after book. I have to tell you, if you try to become an author and to try to sell books, the amount of rejection you have to deal with, it's impossible to describe. Yeah. Like I say, in almost all artistic endeavors, you really have to persist. You really have to believe that what you are doing is important, or at least is valuable. And it's only now that we're in 2016 when I'm getting traction and getting readers from different countries and doing interviews now almost every day. Wow. So now I'm getting a lot of traction. So it's getting better and better and better. But I tell you, it requires a lot of energy. It requires a lot of conviction. And I have learned this from history. I have learned this not because I'm a positive thinker and I tell myself every day, you're the best in the world, you're going to make it, you're going to make it, which I would not sustain for longer than a week, because the reason for my motivation is say, look, I have seen many cases in history that people developed things which were unusual, they were new, they were innovative, and it takes a lot of effort to get the ball rolling. Anything you do, any entrepreneurial activity, it takes a lot of work, unless you simply try to establish yourself on a trend which is already there. Right. Basically, by having a copycat product, and this is also possible, but it is not the way I chose to do it. And to deal with this kind of opposition and frustration and rejection, for any author or for any entrepreneur, this is really a lot of work. So you have to really inspire yourself, I would say daily, by looking at examples of people who have done similar things. And when you have doubts whether you're going to make it, whether the whole thing is worth it, whether all the energy that you are putting in is going to return a good result, in the end, you can say, look, this has been done before. It has been done before many times, and I'm going in the right direction. Gotcha.
That makes sense. That does. So you're patterning your life after people who've gone before and reaped success, so you know you're not just starting off and blindly walking into the fog with no idea of what kind of results you might expect to get.
Indeed.
Yeah. Excellent. So how are you sharing hope with people today? I think you've answered that question about 10 times already, and I'm so glad you have, because people really need, if they want to get their brains around how to logically pursue what's next in their lives and know how to actually think that through and not just act on emotion alone, they need to make sure they get a hold of some of your stuff that you've written. But how else are you sharing hope in your daily life other than being an author, which obviously 8 books in 8 years, I just added it up in my head. That's incredible. Congratulations. But what else are you doing out there besides writing? It sounds like maybe
I
all you
talk
have
to a lot
time
of
to do.
people, and I have now a newsletter, and I get to talk to a lot of people. And my last book is the title is On Becoming Unbreakable. And it has become, for me, I mean, the way to get to know me, because they find the book intriguing and say, okay, who is this guy and what is this book and this kind of stuff. And then they come with questions and they send me emails, can you tell me this and this and this? And also during interviews, some people start questioning me, what's this on Becoming Unbreakable? This is nonsense. I tell, look, the whole idea is that you cannot really, as an author, I cannot really provide advice to every specific question because, I mean, I don't know the people. I just can provide the general principles. Mm-hmm. But the whole idea of becoming full of hope, enthusiastic, motivated the whole day, to becoming unbreakable for me is the point where you are not really bothered by the little nonsense of every day and you can keep going in the right direction. Mm-hmm. And what I have done in this book is to provide a series of techniques based on history, based on real cases that do not require a lot of emotional energy. Because I tell you, if you tell someone who is depressed or who is going through a lot of problems and who has, say, anxiety or depression or a lot of stress, you tell, be positive, come on, and this kind of stuff. I mean, people become even more depressed because they say, okay, it's easy to say that for you, but because you have a good situation, but look at me, I'm sick, I'm unemployed, I don't have money. I mean, I find this kind of advice insulting because it's not realistic. Mm-hmm. And what I try to provide in this book is a specific advice how you can overcome the situation. Now, let me just give you one simple example. One of my favorite stories about personal development is a book that has now 2,000 years. It's 2,000 years old. It's the first personal development book written in history. And it was written in the ancient Rome by an author called Ovid. And Ovid wrote this book on personal development. The book is about dating, and it's called The Art of Love. And the book is fascinating. It's the first, really the first personal development book about psychology ever written in history. And the whole idea of Ovid is that how can people deal with rejection, with despair, with low self-esteem, when they're being rejected in love, which is a situation that happens very often to millions of people when they're dating. And Ovid, you have to see that he wrote the book in an environment of low technology where many people had really huge problems just to make a living, because ancient Rome it was really a very primitive society. Yeah. But he came out with advice which is amazing and you can still apply today because he's so practical. And it does not require a lot of emotional energy. You can put your energies, if you're having problems, you can put the little energies you have, you can put the energies on solving the problem instead of trying to cheer yourself up, which is most of the time a waste of time. Gotcha. So what Ovid recommended in the case of romantic rejection and problems with dating and trying to find the right person in your life is basically to play the numbers. And to play the numbers, nowadays, if you are in sales, maybe you could know what is behind. But Ovid realized that most people get hung up on some specific failure in their lives, whether it's romantic, whether it's business, whether it's relationships, whether it's investments. And they say, okay, I made a bad investment. Look, I lost money. I will never invest in the stock market, never again in my life. And they get to these kind of conclusions which are completely out of proportion with the problem. And Ovid realized that this is a pattern in human psychology which is very difficult to overcome, because you get focused on your specific failure, your specific deficiency, your specific mistake, and then you don't realize that you have to look at the big picture. As I explained in the beginning when I talk about the state of the world, how to stay optimistic, you have to look at the big picture also when you look at yourself. And Ovid said, look, very wisely, if you get rejected, you have to realize that there are many possible romantic partners out there. If you're in the ancient Rome, you were talking about thousands of people. Now with the internet, you're talking about millions of people.
Sure.
And what Ovid recommended is, instead of just hanging there complaining about your bad luck and how bad your situation is, which is basically a waste of time, you should just get up and go where you can find potential romantic partners. And in ancient Rome, Ovid very wisely said, look, go through the theater, go to the games where there are a lot of women, because there you can really meet new people. And don't give up, just continue to meet new people, and eventually you will succeed, because it's just a question of playing the numbers. Mm-hmm. And this advice, which is 2,000 years old, doesn't require to become extremely positive, doesn't require you to believe in the law of attraction. You don't have to believe in anything. You just have to apply it, because it's pure common sense. And this is the kind of ideas that I think people should be applying in their lives if they want to become hopeful. Instead of trying to become artificially enthusiastic, it's better to get a technique that works, and then you say, okay, this has been working for hundreds of years. If you just apply, most of the time you're going to be successful.
I love it. I love it. I have a background in sales, and that is definitely the way it works. It's a numbers game, and so many things in life are like that, and we sure do like to romanticize them, not just relationships, but just a lot of things, and think there's something to do with, my bravery or cunning or whatever sleight of hand I might be able to pull off in life to get some success. But really it comes down to how many times did you try, and how many times did you dust yourself off after a failure and get back up and try again, because it'll turn around.
Yeah, indeed.
I love it, yeah. Okay, so question 5. The rational, simple ABC steps for how to share hope with others or how to grow as a person of hope. Give us the simple steps.
Well, I would just give one step. And I think the easiest way to have an emotionally easy life, where you can be happy most of the time and you can be hopeful most of the time, is very easy. You just have to surround yourself with people that share your ideas. And this is a very simple idea. Difficult to do sometimes, because we tend to move in social environments which are really close geographically, and say, my friends, the people who I work with, and the people who live in the same area. Mm-hmm. But generally speaking, if you have any ideas you might have, whether it's religious or political or I don't know, whatever ideas you might have, mm-hmm. Or interest, hobbies or whatever, if you just get into meeting people, sharing those interests and those ideas, you will become very happy. And I have seen this in history a million times. I mean, people who were miserable from all economic standards. I mean, you have seen in history people who were poor, who were with physical problems. Some people were actually invalid. Some people who had problems just to survive, to get enough food. And you see some people in history extremely happy because they just went into the right environment. And it reminds me, one of the stories in my books, one guy who was, I think it was in Italy, and the guy was a reject. I mean, his parents didn't want him. He could not really grasp how to read books because he was a bit retarded. I mean, he tried to learn to read, but in the end, his parents said, look, you are good enough just to take care of the sheep. And they put him on the fields just to take care of the sheep. But the guy was not happy because he was not loved. He was not getting any opportunities for the future. And then he escaped home, mm-hmm. and he went to a monastery and he tried to become a monk. And the whole story is fascinating because at the beginning, of course, they didn't want him because they said, come on, you're just the idiot of the village. So we don't want to have you here. But the guy, no, I want to be a monk. I want to be a monk. And he pestered the people in the monastery for weeks until they took him as a novice. He went there. He started there. And then he thrived in a way which is unbelievable because he learned Latin. He learned to read. He became a very wise person. And by the time he was in his 40s, you have people from all around Europe going to consult him on all kinds of questions because he had such an amount of wisdom, and he was reputed as a good speaker. Can you imagine the guy who could not even learn to read just because he moved into the right environment? I mean, he was really, in his village, he was basically the village idiot. Mm-hmm. And when he went into the monastery and he started to get some possibilities for learning and for developing, 20 years later was one of the great European, in terms of reputation, one of the really wise person, and you see kings and princes going from Vienna to Italy just to talk to this guy. And these kind of stories I find fascinating because it shows you the principle that you can still apply today. If you want to thrive, if you want to develop yourself in business, in your private life, emotionally, and to achieve happiness, the easiest way I have found, and I really underline this in my books, is to share, to find yourself surrounded by people who share your ideas, who share your interests, who appreciate you, because the worst you can do is to try to convince people who don't care to care. I mean, this is almost impossible. You could really waste your life trying to change people's minds. This happens very, very rarely. It's much better to look for the kind of people who appreciate what you have to offer, and then you can really thrive. And as an entrepreneur, this is a lesson that you only learn by making mistakes and trying to sell your products to every kind of environment and people and segment of the population is a mistake. The more focused you are, the better your chances, the lower your marketing cost, and the higher your success.
Good entrepreneurial advice as well. We should have a podcast called I Share Entrepreneurial Advice, and you could be on that one too. I love it. I love it. Man, John, you got some good stuff here. So I just got to ask, when you're sitting around and you don't maybe feel as optimistic as you're hoping to, do you ever listen to music? Do you attend a theater? Do you like art? Are there any soft, I don't want to say non-rational, but there are soft, that's what I want to say, non-rational things that you do that just help you along in life?
Well, I do many non-rational things. As I said, emotions are very important. But I have to tell you, one of the things that really fascinates me is art. And I have a small art gallery in where I live. Well, actually, I collect reproduction of great paintings, like Van Gogh, for instance, or many classical paintings. So I collect reproductions, good quality reproductions, and I have a small gallery. And I really find fascinating when you see one of these paintings made, hundreds of years ago, sometimes people who were not recognized. I find the story, for instance, of Van Gogh, who was a Dutch Belgian painter. When you see the amazing paintings he made, he got zero recognition in his life, but the guy kept going. And actually, sometimes you have to ask yourself whether it's worth it to get going in the direction you are, to try to push your business or to try to push your profession, saying, okay, this is not working for me. Is it really worth it to keep going? And the whole answer, when you look at these works of art, is that you always see that some people are really very clever because they find the sweet spot between their talents and the market. And this was not the case of Van Gogh. And I really like his pictures, his paintings, his work. But I realized that he could not really find, like other artists of his time, he could not really find the market for his paintings. While you see other people in the same time, like William Turner in the UK. William Turner, and I spent really a lot of time in my last book. I really spent, I think, 2 chapters devoted to William Turner. Because Turner was the opposite case of Van Gogh. He was a guy who was massively rejected, massively criticized by the newspaper, massively ridiculed because he was very shy, he could not speak. I mean, he was really a social retarded person. But he was so successful financially that in the end, the guy, at the beginning, he tried to convince people of his value and tried to debate everybody, to try to reply to the newspapers. And at a certain point, he just gave up and said, look, I don't care. I just do my business. I continue to do my paintings. And William Turner, in contrast to Van Gogh made all possible business mistakes in his life. William Turner was very clever because in the end he gave up. And he said, look, I cannot convince everybody. I cannot get everybody to like my paintings. My paintings are original. They're ahead of their time. I will have a small market, but I'm going to go after this market. And Turner is something that is unique in history. Turner, from the moment that he gave up trying to convince people, and he devoted all his time to paintings, at the end he was able to paint 3 paintings per day. He was able to produce 3 paintings per day, day after day after day. And the way he did it is just by giving up. He gave up trying to convince people. He gave up trying to sell his paintings to galleries. So in the end, he focused on what he was able to do. And he realized also his weak points. He was a guy who, contrary to Van Gogh, he was not very creative. I mean, Turner was not able to produce original designs, but he was able to copy very well. So he spent the summers going around in Europe, basically walking because he didn't have a lot of money. So he basically walked around Europe, or he spent very little money moving around, and he had a sketchbook in his hands with some carbons, and he just made sketches 12 hours a day. So he would walk around France, making sketches of churches, monasteries, mountains, and then he would go back to the UK, to London in September, and then he would spend the winter transforming the sketches into paintings. And he was able to produce 2 or 3 paintings per day, every single day.
Wow.
So when he died, he left about 5,000 designs still unsold, but he was able to sell paintings to collectors in the UK, not only, also in the US, in France, in Belgium. And you will find that Turner died, he had an immense amount of money. He had houses in different places. He was a very quiet guy. So in the end, he did the right thing. And this is what I really recommend in my books, and that I think is crucial to keep your hope in the future. You have to use your deficiencies to your advantage. And if you say, okay, I'm a shy guy, I cannot do this, well, just don't do it. Just try to find some way that you can use your talents, that you can use your energy, find a way to use it, like Turner, and don't become Van Gogh. Don't become a misunderstood artist that dies in misery. I mean, try to be misunderstood, but to be wealthy and to be successful.
That's great. Good advice. I love this. This is just laced with good advice. Nice. All right, John, how do we track you down and find you on the web? Social media, websites, where is your work hanging out on the digital format?
Well, it is super easy. If you just type my name, John Vespasian, in Google, you will find my blog, you'll find my books. You can also subscribe to my free newsletter. Just type John Vespasian in Google and you will find everything immediately. Very, very easy.
And for you listening along, that's JohnVespasian. And if you're out for a walk or a run or at the store listening to this on the podcast, you're not in front of something you could write down, then just go to I Share Hope later whenever you get back. iShareHope.com. You can Google that as well and look for John in the interview section, and we will have all the links to John's website, social media, whatever you need. It'll be there. Notes for the interview, quotes from John, all that sort of thing will be there. I think we even see if we can get some links in there to your books. I mean, we'll try to make sure that everybody can find out what you're doing and track you down and get some of your material. Thank you, John. It's been a privilege, a true privilege to talk to you.
Well, Chris, I enjoyed this very much. I think the work you do is fantastic because the idea of spreading hope by trying to interview people from different environments, because most podcasts are really monothematic. I mean, they get into the track and they never move from the track. It's like copy-paste all the time. But when I see someone trying to interview people from different countries and different environments with some very idealistic purpose to spread hope, I find it fascinating. And I think it's a great idea. I hope you continue to be very successful, and I thank you very much.
Well, thank you, John. And right before you go, we have each of our guests say their name and I Share Hope, because we use this little audio clip at the beginning of the podcast. So say your name and I Share Hope, or your name and something about you and I Share Hope.
Hi, this is John Vespasian. I'm delighted to be in the I Share Hope podcast. And I hope you can use some of my ideas to find your way in life.
Wonderful. That's great, man. Been a privilege, John. Thank you for your time, and get some rest, and hopefully you'll wake up ready to rock and roll tomorrow morning.
Many thanks, Chris. Have a nice day.
All right, you too, man. Bye-bye.
You've just listened to I Share Hope. If you're ready to make a change, head to our website at iShareHope.com and claim your free copy of the Top 10 Actions of Hope from World Leaders to use hope in your own life. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.